My name is Jeff Sandels. I'm a chiropractor from Snellville, Georgia. Married. I was born in Erie, Pennsylvania. And my grandparents are descendants of Swedish and Italian. Television back then was black and white. I do remember that they were not on 24 hours a day. They were on, probably signed off at about 11 o'clock at night, and I do remember there always was a test pattern, and they always played the national anthem, and they showed the Air Force jets streaming across the screen as they played the national anthem. And you know, there were only 3 stations, and they were black and white, and it was very limited what you could watch. Favorite TV shows? My favorite TV shows were, I like all the old corny sitcoms, you know, the Beverly Hillbillies and Hogan's Heroes and Gilligan's Island. That was pretty much what we watched. We watched Batman when it first came on, and couldn't wait to see that every week.
Sound a sour note, Joker.
But it's time for us to make our own collection. Destroy them!
Everything's in color now. So as far as black and white, when we do see a good black and white, you know, it's nice to see that. It's different, and I enjoy it. But I still think I prefer color. I was a big New York Yankee fan. I don't remember who they were playing, but I remember the excitement of seeing Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle and Whitey Ford and all the old, now the old Yankees. At the time, they were my heroes. We always played baseball in the neighborhood. We had a field, a lot we played in, and no matter how many people showed up, we were always playing baseball. And to see your heroes on TV was pretty exciting, especially the ones you loved, you know. And like I said, I don't remember to this day who won the game or who they were playing, but I know it was exciting to see that.
So when you played, who were you?
I was Mickey Mantle, absolutely. He was my hero. Mickey Mantle was my hero. What I remember about the JFK assassination is very little. I was very young. I was about 6 years old, and I do remember at the time that it was announced over the television, and my mom, she was upset about it. A lot of people obviously were upset, but I remember being in the house, my mom basically being upset that JFK had been shot, and really, that's about all I remember. The civil rights movement, again, that was like 1964. I was 7 years old, young to sort of grasp exactly what's going on. You know, as being young and naive, you don't learn a lot of you haven't had time to learn prejudices. There was never any in my house. What I remember about Martin Luther King Jr. assassination is I do remember them talking about possible riots in I think it was in Los Angeles, and that made me feel, I guess, you know, deep down a little nervous about, you know, about life and what was going to happen. And in regard to the war in Vietnam, I do remember it was a little bit before my time. The war ended prior to me graduating from high school, so I had no experience with personally being in Vietnam. However, I had some older friends of that had older brothers that were in Vietnam, and you know, back then the sentiment that I knew about was very anti-military. I guess you call it more Dove. you know, you didn't want to participate. The younger generation was against the Vietnam War. I was against the Vietnam War. Certainly didn't want to participate. When I did graduate, I was required to sign up for the draft, and at that time, because it was anti-military, I had no desire to volunteer for the military, and a lot of my friends didn't either. And as a result, like I said, I think the military suffered a little bit with recruitment at that time, and of course since then times have changed. But at that time I was sort of very, even though I was younger than the sort of hippie generation, you know, you followed that through the music and through magazines, and you became more of a peace lover than a war lover, for sure. What I remember about the news as I was growing up was Walter Cronkite. He was on CBS. David Brinkley was on NBC, and they came on every day, every night. And back then, as I said, television only had 3 or 4 channels, so you pretty much watched the news, and you got your news from those guys. They were there all the time, and you sort of trusted them to bring you the stories you wanted to hear. In regard to the Beatles, I do remember them being on the Ed Sullivan Show. We watched them on the Ed Sullivan Show. The Beatles were it. They were, and to this day, from my generation, there's still no comparison with their songwriting talents and their lifestyle. You know, that's still, I still listen to the Beatles today more than the music of today's generation.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you something I think you'll understand when I say that something. I wanna hold your hand, I wanna hold your hand.
Just as time went on from the Beatles, you know, the rock and roll evolved to all those old groups, the Allman Brothers and Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, obviously, they're a big one. You know, and all that was part of that generation, the anti-war, the hippie movement, the music, you know, all of it kind of blended together. The first, what I do remember about the first landing on the moon was Neil Armstrong was on TV. We were able to watch it on TV. Of course, he came down and did his little quote, which I can't remember what it is right now. But that was pretty exciting, especially for me. That was around 1969 or 70 maybe, and so I was a young teenager. And you know, when we grew up, when we were growing up, it was all about you know, flying airplanes, flying fighter jets, and being an astronaut or pretending to be an astronaut. So it was very, very exciting. The evolution of television, I would have to say that I'm not very pleased. I don't watch it a whole lot for that reason, just because there's really nothing on there that appeals to me. And a lot of the sitcoms, you know, I'll watch documentaries and things like that, sports obviously, but in terms of the entertainment part of television, there's not a whole lot that I get from it. There are a few good shows that I've mentioned before, like Breaking Bad, but for the most part, you know, TV is really kind of disappointing.